this weather and want to be able to get back out and do your favorite hobby, and would want to ramp up your golf game for this season, but are unable to do it because of their bodily injuries or underlying problems that they're dealing with, or would want to really beat up their peers, but and using their body as an excuse to not be able to do it, right? We do that all the time. Here I am, Avi. I'm a physiotherapist and at Precision Physiotherapy and Hamilton Physio Rehab. Today I'd like to talk to you guys about 4 tips or health tips that you could do to really ramp up your game and then prevent your body from any sort of injuries, and then last this season without using any, I wouldn't say using excuses, but without having your body to not able to cooperate this season. So the first thing would be to prepare your body before we start a golf game. It's just like any activity, right? It's important to warm up the body really well. So 2 or 3 simple stretches that I often recommend would be to stretch up your pec muscles. Second would be a lat muscle, which starts from your hip, goes all the way from the shoulder blade and then attaches to the shoulder. An important muscle that allows you in rotating your body. So really important to warm that muscle up. And then the third one would be to do a little bit of a hinging from your hip, because there's a lot of hinge that we do from your hip rather than the rounding of the back. So the pec would be something that you can stretch this way by keep locking your golf club and then rotating it out. You get some rotation on your spine as well, and that works really well. And then doing a few more rotations. If at all you have some already underlying issues with your shoulder, then you don't necessarily have to put the club back. You can just keep it this way and then rotate it just by keeping it behind your head, so that there's not a lot of strain on your shoulder, and then you'd feel a little stretch there. Second stretch would be for your lat muscles. So you could go into this sort of a position and then let your upper back just lean back a bit this way, and not having to arch your lower back. So you should just feel a little stretch into your shoulder blade area and then your shoulders as well. So that would be really good. Third one would be hinging from your hip. So keeping the club nice at an arm length distance from your body, and then keeping it between your 2 legs, and then you're hinging from your hip and then feeling a good nice stretch this way. And then you could stretch your hamstring as well this way if you keep your knees a little straighter, and then you can lean as further as you can so that you can feel the stretch as further as you can. The idea is to not feel pain, but a mild stretch and a discomfort. This stretch that I talked about, another enhancement that you could do with this stretch is about leaning your body to one side. So you're elongating one side of the lats, and then the same thing, you're leaning on the other side and you're elongating the other side of the lats there. That was tip number 1. Tip number 2, I would like you to see this, so if with this sort of a spine, so in biomechanics, what we say is that as then the body extends, the body tends to rotate. So for a posture like this, you see a little bit of a rounded spine here. This is something that everyone is conscious of, but subconsciously everyone mostly tends to round up their spine as and when we go into this sort of an extension, and then we would go into that. And when our spine is rounded, it can really limit ourselves from having that full flow of the swing, and then causing that acceleration or the momentum that we need to be able to hit that ball. So one of the ways to be able to not cause rounding of the spine while you are in that position would be to, if you followed some of my previous video along, I've referenced this in the past, which is keeping a golf club up here and then letting it have 2 or 3 touch points, and these 2 or 3 touch points would be a tailbone or between your shoulder blade and then just behind your head. If you can get that feeling of it being touching these 3 areas, if it's not touching, if it's only having one touch point like it between your shoulder blade, that means you're rounded. So you can go back to understand what it feels like, and then going into this hinge positions, hinging from your hip and not rounding from your back. Put in a lot of repetitions to it so that your subconscious starts understanding what a straighter spine should look like without having it rounded. And once you've put in those reps, it automatically could stimulate in your golf game so that you have an understanding of preventing that sort of a posture. And better posture gives you the best chance to be able to play your A game. Tip number 3 would be something that I call it as a golfer's lift. So keeping, if you're playing, long day, 9 holes, 18 holes throughout the day, there's a constant repetitive bending, squatting that is needed to be able to pick up those golf balls. One way to be able to eliminate or prevent the amount of stresses on your lower back, your hips, your knees, would be to use a different sort of a lifting mechanism, and that's where we call it as a golfer's lift. You can keep the club just as an arm distance from your body, and then you can put it on the side where you feel a lot more balanced and a lot more stable, so that you can go down, hinge from your hip, and then let your other leg extend. So you are not having to round up your spine and cause any sort of strain on your lower back. And this works like almost as a good balance exercise as well. Throughout your day, more repetitions of this, and then you just get better. Mix things around. If you feel balanced, quite balanced, and want to challenge yourself, you could try and then with your non-dominant side as well. Tip number 4 would be foot positioning. So, as and when we grow older, especially 50 years and older, there are chances of people developing arthritis in their hips. So if people are dealing with some underlying hip issues or even lower back issues, one of the compensatory mechanism or one of the movement that causes a lot of pain or people have limitations with is the internal rotation of the hip that needs a movement like this. So in which this is a femur, that is your thigh bone, it has a ball, and then it attaches with a socket, that means your hip. So when we are in this sort of a position, and then when we are doing a rotation, there is a lot of internal rotation that's happening, and a lot of repetitions of that, or if an underlying issue that you're dealing with your hip could cause a lot of pain in your groin or some discomfort in your lower back, and then can affect your golf game too. So one of the very sneaky and a short strategy to be able to, wow, there's a fly here, as a strategy to be able to prevent repetitive internal rotation of your hip would be to, in this position, all what you have to do is that the hip that you're dealing the problem with, you can have the toes pointing a little further out, and then that would cause the hip to go into external rotation, and then when you are going into your swing, it's not causing that rotation that you are dealing with. If you have both issues, the hip problem, then you can have a little bit further out of both your foot at the same given time. And a small sneaky change like that could prevent any kind of repetitive strain on that hip, and then have your A game be played. That's about it for this video. Hope you like that, and then if you have any certain questions, feel free to ask and ask me.